From one crisis to the next, the public is led like feeble lambs to willing slaughter. Nevertheless, when it comes to considering the war in Ukraine, will a majority of the general public, many of whom are still suffering from psychological trauma due to a deliberately manufactured pandemic, and the deleterious physical effects derived from mandated but genocidal vaccines, aka genetic therapy, never conceive of the idea they've been utterly and completely deceived on multiple levels by the sinister machinations of the MSM's psychological operations? Though one remains eternally optimistic, admittedly, the eventuality of such a collective epiphany coming to fruition doesn't seem likely to ever occur. But just what do these multiple levels of deception consist of? For one, reams of recycled MSM news footage borrowed from other past news events, and still other footage appearing to have been deliberately manufactured via a clever post-production technique, generative adversarial network. Secondly, the perpetual and insufferable tin-eared propagandizing issued by both the MSMs and the US corporate government's legions of soulless but well-paid mouthpieces. To be certain, that is, at least to anyone paying close attention to detail, the MSM's cloying emotionalism coupled in tandem with galleries of transparent lies and memory-searing buzzwords. The use of the terms front lines, for example, sound very familiar, almost as if the psychologically manipulative propaganda which was utilized to sell the COVID-19 pandemic for the last 2 years had suddenly been rebranded with a new color scheme of yellow and blue. Deployment of psychologically emotive color schemes and the strategic placement of NLP, neural linguistic programming, are both time-tested tools which have been repeatedly used to augment the effectiveness of the MSM's propaganda messaging. Thirdly, the man now well known to the American public as Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine's freely elected president, has been identified as yet another fabricated character scheme, one who exists as a well-handled Jesuit-trained intelligence asset, one not only portrayed by a Hollywood actor, but one who appears to have been deliberately placed on the world stage to play out his carefully scripted role, a manufactured myth made to order and transformed into flesh and blood, a political upstart and underdog protagonist whose conception was intended to be marketed and trumpeted by MSM as a wartime heroic savior. But before this well-known Hollywood actor visited Ukraine in 2016, was named as an official functionary of the UN and was subsequently modified into Volodymyr Zelensky, he played the role of a rock star in the Hollywood music industry, one who, according to both the MSM and Wikipedia, was alleged to have died in 2017. Though the popular notion held by the proletariat when considering the concept of warfare, implies the armed and deadly struggle between nations or enemy combatants for control of land regions, since 1302, the hegemonic ownership of all nations, aka commercial markets consisting of human and natural resources, has been legally designated as Crown land as expressed by the terms and conditions of the papal encyclicals known as Sestu Eq Vi Trusts or Three Crowns. The governance or Commonwealth of Nations is centralized from the Crown Temple, aka 1 square mile, in the City of London, the SNB, Swiss National Bank, and Vatican City in Rome, controlled by the Superior General of the Jesuit Order, with the Corporation of the US, aka Washington, D.C., historically serving as their military sword arm, global enforcer, and world's police force. Therefore, in the context of the modern age, the concept of war is executed to facilitate the systematic controlled demolition of non-commercially viable and unsustainable building infrastructures and the strategic relocation and efficient reduction of population centers. More than a millennia ago, the 13 ruling elite Jesuit families learned the systematic execution of psychological warfare, promulgation, promotion of ideas, rather than the cost-prohibitive maintenance of occupying standing armies. Martial law was much more efficient in maintaining hegemonic governance over population centers and unchallenged control over the means of industrial, commercial production. In truth, while the MSM sells the public dramatic Hollywood-styled narratives filled with death, destruction, and human interest melodrama, it is these ruling 13 families, pledged in eternal fealty to the Papal Vatican in Rome, Pax Romana, while working in league with the Crown Temple bankers and while enjoying monopolized control over the MSM, who have always recognized it is on the battlefield of the general public's collective mind where the real war must be fought and then won. While the MSM has branded the marketing of the Ukraine war with the colors of shimmering yellow and bright sky blue, colors which have now been ubiquitously and conspicuously displayed on legions of social media accounts, on an occult level, rather than hope and serenity, the overt display of such colors implies or signifies an entirely different and perhaps ominous meaning. respectively, as they symbolically and conceptually relate to the occult. The colors of blue and yellow represent the throat and solar plexus chakras. Meaning, on an occult level, while committed to economically downsizing, deindustrializing both America and the West to a third world status, the ruling elites are covertly signaling to the proletariat of their true intentions. To put it more succinctly, while carrying out a global depopulation agenda, aka UN Agenda 2030-2050, the 13 ruling Jesuit families are winding up to pummel humanity in the stomach and, once having finally knocked the wind out of their hapless victim, are readying to clasp the heel of their heavy boot to its collective neck to ensure it cannot continue to breathe. Therefore, the next time some blow-dried MSM pundit or pompous UN bureaucratic windbag is heard euphemistically prattling about achieving global sustainability, or zero CO2 emissions, everyone will truly know to what is being referred: global genocide. Nevertheless, within the span of the last several weeks since the inception of the war in Ukraine, everyone has witnessed this calculating, systematic, but sinister method of operation playing out on their television and computer screens. It appears, not only is the manufactured Ukraine-Russia war scenario being used to further legitimize the UN as an effective instrument of conflict resolution and global governance, but Ukraine is also being utilized as a testing ground for the military execution of contingency depopulation strategies which the 13 ruling families, in future, are planning to use both in America and the West to better and more speedily implement the genocidal and economically transformational sustainability goals of the UN's Agenda 2030. As has been demonstrated, not only have the three branches of the U.S. corporate government proved to be populated with fabricated character schemes, many of whom are descendants of the 13 ruling Jesuit families, the governing parliament of the Ukraine and the executive branch of the corporate state of Russia have also proved to be no exception. This first clue something might be amiss concerning Ukraine's president, Volodymyr Zelensky, came in the form of a recent televised appearance of Ukraine parliamentarian, Kira Rudik, who, upon further investigation, was discovered to be a Hollywood actress.